Okay, hi everybody. My name is Professor Kelsey Kohs, and this is Divination Academy, and I'm super thrilled to have you here with me tonight. I'm super honored that you've chosen me to be a guide and a teacher and a mentor for you on your magical path and your path of paganism, witchcraft. It means a lot to me. So a little bit of information here for you before we get going. Tonight's class is the first in a brand new series that I'm going to be doing, which we're going to cover a lot of different types of paths of magic and paths of practice within paganism because there is endless. There are so many choices for you to go down, especially if you're kind of new to this path. It can be incredibly overwhelming. It can be a lot of information to sort through, and even if you're not new, you can always learn new information. You can learn new ways to work with your magic, work with energies, and figure out how you view your place in the multiverse. So that's why I'm really teaching this class. And that's why I'm really excited to be teaching this class in this series. Tonight, the first path we're going to be covering is going to be gray magic and gray being a gray witch. First, I'm doing that first for one. There's not a lot of information out there about it. There just really isn't. Two, that is the path that I practice. I am a gray magic practitioner. It took me a while to get to this path, but this is my path. This is how I function. This is how I teach. So I also wanted to give you guys a more in-depth look into the magic, the path that I am teaching from all the classes that you guys are taking from me and you have available to me. So it's a big reason why I'm teaching this one as well. But again, there's not a lot of information about this path. And it's a unique path and it's my path and I deeply love it. So I'm very excited to teach this one. A little bit about Divination Academy. If you're new to us, you just found us. We are a free pagan academy. Everything that we do is free. All of our events, all of our classes, all of our certification programs, our private apprenticeships, everything we do is free. Our core tenet is we believe that resources, education should be free and accessible to all. So that's what we do. That's what we provide. We have lots of ways for you to get resources and to connect with us. We have our Facebook page. You can send us a message there to enroll. And sometimes it may take a little bit because we only have, I think, 3 enrollment managers right now, but we will get back to you as soon as we can. I know I'm going to be going through some of those requests this weekend, but you can send us a message to enroll. You'll get access to our private Facebook community, our private chats, and a lot of other things. And then if you also check out our YouTube channel, if you search Divination Academy, we're the first one that pops up. I'm pretty sure we're the only one. Right now, we have over 180 videos uploaded. We have more waiting to be uploaded on a lot of different classes on herbalism, working with crystals, history, mythology of the jinn, demonology. We have tarot. We have astrology. So many things on there. So take a look at that and then take a look at our website, Divination Academy. Our study guides go there, information about our professors go there, reading lists, PDFs to actual entire books go there. Lots of stuff is there for you for free resources as well. And then, yeah, let's dive in. So like I said, tonight we're talking about gray magic, being a gray witch, and we're doing that lots of reasons, but mainly because I'm a gray witch. Also, I'm a mystic, so that's a whole other thing, but I'm super excited. The material I'm teaching from tonight, I'm going to drop the link in the chat for you, is right there. If you're new with me, I always teach from a study guide or the blog post. Sometimes it's hard for me to make both copies at once, so I make one and then convert the other later, and then you have access to both. But there's the material I'm teaching from because I do also, like I said, I have my own business as well, modgepodgemystic.com, and that's where that's coming from. But that's what I'm teaching from tonight. And then also, if you're new, I can't pay attention to the chat all the time. I get really distracted. You can put stuff in the chat whenever you would like. I just may not answer it immediately, but I will get to it, I promise. So we're going over, like I said, being a gray witch, what a gray witch is, gray magic, all that fun stuff. Before we get into that, some disclaimers. This isn't I don't want anybody to think that when we're going over any of these paths, that this is a hard set, restrictive set of rules, guidelines, like a book that you need to follow. This is the framework for what most gray witches will think, practice, how they believe, how they function. If you choose to practice this path, you get to determine how that feels to you and how that functions to you. This isn't some type of like code, set of rules. It's not incredibly restrictive. So I just want you to remember that when you're learning and when you're thinking about these paths. Because even when I talk about this, when it comes to a gray witch, for example, some gray witches look at themselves as a neutral force and everything's incredibly neutral, where others look at it about maintaining balance between two separate forces. So there's also distinctions there as well. So just keep that in mind. This isn't one set restrictive rule. Feel your intuition, feel your flow. Also keep in mind this path may not resonate with you at all, and that is totally fine. You don't have to have judgment about it or anything like that. Um, it is important to learn about everything and to feel it out and to think about what you're thinking. And then, like I touched on before, I'm really talking about a lot of this because being a pagan, following the craft, following witchcraft, working with magic, there are so many avenues that you can go. There's so many different practices. You can choose to initiate yourself into a set religion like Wicca, or you can choose to not do that and practice a path like this, more like gray witchcraft. And there's just so many choices. So that's really why we're covering this as well. So with gray witch, gray magic, being a gray witch, it really is coming from the understanding of the basics of duality, balance, and really understanding that nature itself, the multiverse itself, the energies that we all exist of within ourselves, it's all very dualistic. So most pagans believe in duality. That's actually a very common belief. Most pagans actually do some way, shape, or form believe that. Many paths consistently teach this. It's even incredibly common that you see it not only as them teaching them as these opposing forces, whether it's divine feminine and divine masculine, whether it's the physical and the spiritual, whether it's light versus dark, whether, and by the way, I don't like those verbiages. It for many reasons. It's got racist connotations. It's got a lot of other things. I don't like using light versus dark. I use wanted versus unwanted, but I do know that I will end up teaching it with those verbiage because that's how most people refer to gray magic, and a lot of my writing I do reference that, but I did put that disclaimer as well, so keep that in mind. If you are choosing to refer to magic that way, there's a lot of different reasons not to. It attaches negative connotation to an energy that's a neutral force. It attaches a lot of different like negative stigma. Also, it's inherently racist to do that as well, so we just really shouldn't be doing that. So I don't like that. So just that disclaimer as well. But whatever it is, when it comes to teaching in pagans, it's like I said, it's very common that we have those dualistic forces. And it's even common that even if you look at the very beginning creation stories, those forces actually were one at one point and then were divided and separated. So that's also when you look at this, all energy, all this dualistic, the energy, the universe, the multiverse, the earth, everything that we exist in, it comes from these two energy sources. Whether it came from it when it was still one together or when they got divided, it doesn't matter what the viewpoint is. You can pick and choose how you view that, how you want to work with those energies. But that dualistic sense, that dualistic force, it permeates pagan past and pagan cultures. So a gray witch and following the gray witch path, like we really envelop this. We take this understanding, we fully understand, and when we do that, we let go of a lot of things that are part of other paths that we shed and we break free, and we try to maintain the sense of balance. We try to understand that energies need to be balanced within the multiverse, within the universe, within the collective, within the earth. So that is the goal, not only in our magic, but in our way of life, because we understand also the duality and the balance of the Hermetic laws. Most specifically, the Hermetic law that most people actually only pick one part of it to work with. But the Hermetic law of as above, so below, as within, so without, so the soul. So, like, that Hermetic law is all about that everything that is inside of us is going to reflect out into the universe, into the collective. So, therefore, in order for our magic, in order for our spiritual practices, in order for our energy to maintain balanced, we ourselves in our daily life need to maintain in duality and balance at all times. So that's something that is super, super key and super essential when it comes to gray witchcraft and being a gray witch. The other big key philosophy is very much, again, understanding that since the divine source, since the divine collective, since the source that everything comes from, every energy we're all made from, is neutral, it's gray. That means that magic itself also has to be neutral. It also has to be gray because it comes from the divine and it comes from the source as well. It like it's not this gray, this black. It's not this thing. It is this divine, like this white and black. It is this. It's this gray. It's this neutral energy. It's this neutral force. Magic itself literally just ends up becoming something else because of what we do to direct it with our intentions, the energies we connect it to, the energies we use to manipulate it, all of that. That is what changes the actual essence of magic. It's a neutral force and energy very much at its core. Um, so I'm just going to touch on one more thing before I jump into the chat and see if you guys have any questions. So like I said, generally speaking, when it comes to magic, we have the terms white magic, which is done to benefit others, and usually like raising positive energy for a very particular outcome. It's usually typically used to help us connect to spiritual forces, gain enlightenment, gain wisdom, things like that. And then black magic is typically referred to, and it's done to bring harm to others. A lot of times it's also referred to as a baneful magic. So then when you're talking to others and see it referenced and written, gray magic, a lot of the time, is written and referenced exactly like it sounds. It's a mix between the two. But again, like I said, I don't like using the terms white and black for many reasons, but it's inherently racist and I don't like it. It's also clearly just like got many negative connotations, many negative stigmas, and it takes away the fact that magic is a neutral energy and we're limiting it when we call it that. We're limiting what it can do, we're limiting its potential, we're confining it, and I just don't agree with it. And that is common with gray witches as well. We just like we don't like it's very much that blending. It's understanding that it's neutral. It's not, it shouldn't really fully be separated. Again, there are some gray witches who will think that way. They do think it's very much a balance, and they look and pick and choose of which magic's going to be used when they follow their intuition and their intention, and then others look at it as that neutrality, and making sure that we keep it in that neutrality, we keep it as a whole balance and essence. So again, remember there is that distinction too. I'm going to jump in and see if you guys have any questions so far. You guys do, you can put them in the chat. You can unmute yourself and ask as well. I see some new people that popped in. This is what I'm teaching from tonight, if you would like the information. I don't see any questions so far. I'll give you guys a couple more seconds in case technology is being slow. Otherwise, I'll jump back in. And if I ever need to like slow down or anything, let me know. I can. I'm notorious for talking fast, so sometimes I need to be reminded. Okay. So we're going to jump into more of the nitty gritty of the Grey Witch and Grey Witchcraft and following the Grey Witch path. I broke it down into a lot of different core concepts and beliefs and philosophies within it, how to add it to your practice, how to decide if it's kind of like a path that you want to work with, and kind of central beliefs and views that are common. But again, remember, this is not a restriction. And no pagan path really is meant to be that way unless you decide to initiate yourself into very specific religions. But other than that, like you get to follow your intuition, the ebb and flow. So a gray witch embodies this very unique approach to witchcraft. Like I said, it's incorporating elements of both what's considered left hand aka dark magic, and then right hand, aka light magic. You'll also see these practices referenced as other things such as destructive and constructive magic. You'll also see it referred to as light and love versus negative and painful or evil magic as well. So you'll see a lot of those different like references. A Grey Witch doesn't subscribe or practice like either one. They don't choose to walk either one of those paths or pull directly from either one of those paths. It's very much in the middle. It's very much in this very gray liminal space. We're going to talk about liminal spaces a little bit later too, but it's very much in the middle. There are certain things and aspects, like I said, they shed and let go of, which we're going to get to in just a minute. But they don't subscribe to this love and light only philosophy. They don't subscribe that you should only live in the shadows, and the shadows are the only place that you can heal either. Um, I mean, I also like personally, and most Grey Witches that I talk to, I have a very, very strong issue when it comes to most light people who consider themselves light workers that I've worked with and learned from. They create a very irresponsible imbalance in the universe with the way that they're teaching. And so like a lot of other Grey Witches that I speak to, it's a huge concern of debate when it comes to like the cosmic collective. I personally myself think that's why the world's so out of kilter, actually. So there's that whole issue. So we have that going on as well. But Grey Witches really like they very much strive to view in this very much this middle space, this mixture of balance, this mixture of incorporating things based on our intuition, based on what we need, based on what calls for the situation, based on if justice needs to be served, based on how we need to heal, and things like that. The neutrality of this, the fact that like we sit and they sit in neutrality, it really becomes and creates this force, like I said, that exists between instead of in these extreme ends of witchcraft and paganism. Like it creates this very, very, very unique world that's in between these two places. Um, and it's not just, by the way, like the forces of good and evil that Grey Witches work with. It is all senses of polarity. There are many different senses of polarity. We have femininity and masculinity, we have day and night, we have life and death, we have wanted versus unwanted, we have the concepts of positive and negative. We have so many different polarities to work with. And Grey Witches really strive to work with and understand that all of those different polarities needs to be balanced. And we need to look at all of those energies, not just like a morality and an ethical standpoint of this good versus evil in our magic, our witchcraft, and our life. Um, and they really recognize and understand like the whole and the essence of the whole and the energy, and they understand and embrace both this positive, negative energy and both this all of that concept. So, this next part that we're going to be talking about is some of the things that Grey Witches, key philosophies with them that they break. This is what they shed. This is kind of what they break apart when it comes to certain parts of paganism and witchcraft, and especially neo paganism that's running around right now. And it pops up all the time. But they really let go of this idea of doing no harm. We let go and we don't agree with this idea of doing no harm. We don't agree with this idea that like we just simply don't agree with it. So over and over and over and over again, the Wiccan Rede is touted as some universal law that all witches, all pagans must obey. Otherwise, you're going to face severe consequences if you don't. You're considered an evil, a bad witch. You shouldn't be practicing magic. You're the ones that give us bad names. So many things that come out that I have heard, that I have seen, that I have read. Which is true if you choose to follow the religion of Wicca. Wicca is a religion. Not all witches practice the religion of Wicca. So if you choose to practice the religion of Wicca, I am not going to like, I'm not dogging you or like judging you. That is totally 100% your beliefs, and like, you can totally ignore this part. You can hang on to this. You can keep this a part of your practice. You can keep it a part of your life if you would choose to. But if you aren't initiated into Wicca, this is not something that some law for all witches, all pagans that you have to follow. It's not. It's not some universal belief. It's not some universal law. It's not. Now, it has good intentions. It's a well-meaning rule, but it actually has very severe ramifications, and it's actually quite problematic on very, very, very many fronts. For one, most like the do no harm. That's not even the entire. That's not even the entire rule. That's not even the entire law. And honestly, I don't want to get into that right now. We can get into that when we talk about Wicca more. Um, but for other reasons of why it's so problematic and why there's so many ramifications for trying to say that this is a universal law that everybody should be following, is it creates a massive energetic imbalance for themselves, for their magic, for their spirituality, for the collective, for the multiverse. If you sit here and you only focus in one energy, you only focus in light and love only, you only focus on this doing no harm and only doing actions like that, you create this massive imbalance in energy on this side of the scale, which tips the collective and tips the universe, and it becomes a problem. Other reasons why it's problematic is the one I just talked about. Not every witch is Wiccan. Not everybody is initiated into the religion of Wiccan. So why would we follow those tenets? Why are we forced to be confined to the restrictions of a practice of a religion and beliefs if they do not align with us? That's just simply not okay, and that's a big reason why many of us even came to witchcraft and paganism to begin with. We didn't want those restrictions, and we didn't want those limitations, and we don't agree with those views anymore. Another reason why, if you're still not convinced, why harm none is just completely ridiculous and it really shouldn't be followed, is because it's completely impossible to actually uphold. It's completely impossible to uphold. You're setting yourself up for failure. You're setting the universe and the collective up for failure. You're creating mental spirals that are going to happen. You're creating like lack of self-worth. You're creating restrictions on your potential and who you are. Like, it's literally impossible to uphold. Like, if you think about it, no matter what you do, no matter what type of spell you cast, no matter what type of workings you do, there is no guarantee to be 100% perfectly certain that the consequences of your actions are not going to harm anyone in any way, shape, or form. So here's an example. You could cast getting a new successful job spell. You want to get a new job. Seems pretty harmless, right? Seems pretty positive, right? Seems like it's not going to do harm to anybody else, correct? Well, because you get that job, somebody else didn't get that job. They get passed over for that job. Now, because they got passed over for that job, that was the last chance that they had to make enough money to not get evicted from their home, and now they're homeless on the street with their family. Your spell had unwanted consequences for somebody else in the collective. You had no intention of that. You had like that, no intention whatsoever, but it had unwanted consequences for somebody within the collective. Everything you do could potentially do that. Now look at it from another perspective. You have to look at it from and that's the other part of it. When it comes to like results of things, it's all going to be based on perspective. It's all going to be based on perspective on what's wanted for you and what's unwanted for you. Something that like I could want to happen for me could be completely unwanted for you. I could cast a spell that I would think that would have absolutely fabulous wanted intentions for you in your life to try to help you and lift you and boost you. But in turn, it could have unruly, unwanted consequences on your self-worth and self-image, depending on what happens. It could affect your relationship. Who knows? There could be so many things that could happen. So like it really depends on perspective, on you, on what's going on in the situation, and the fact that like you literally have no control. You have no control over what's going to happen with the consequences of your actions, no matter how clear your intentions are. You are part of a collective, and energy surges, it moves, it influences it. You also then have to look at the fact of breaking free from this, and this is why like gray witches and witchcraft, it's so like a lot end up following this path and come here is you also have to look at the moral gray spaces. So say for instance somebody tries to break in your home, they try to harm your family, and the encounter becomes violent. Is it morally reprehensible for you to hurt that person in self-defense? You're still harming them. So under the harm none, it's not okay. You can't, there's absolutely nothing that you can or should do. Most people that I talk to, and even myself, would agree that defending your life, your home, and your family from an attacker is maybe not necessarily a bad thing, though. But if you wouldn't have defended yourself, would somebody else have gotten hurt? Would your child have gotten hurt? And there's unwanted consequences for your child now? Now, let's say you're driving down the street, it's dark, you're coming home from the bars, you see somebody being attacked, dragged towards an alley, towards a vehicle, potentially being kidnapped. You do nothing because do no harm. Like that person that's kidnapping him is there. They may have a positive intention. Like you don't know, you don't step in. Like you have you could potentially be allowing harm and negative consequences to have that person because of your actions. So when it comes to this idea and this philosophy with magic and witchcraft of this doing no harm and no harm to none, and that we shouldn't ever participate in hexing and baneful, and we shouldn't look at the shadows and work with all types of energy and magic and all intentions with it, it's literally just simply impossible. It's simply impossible doable. The universe, the multiverse, it doesn't work that way. Human nature doesn't work that way. It's just simply not possible. When you understand this within the gray witchcraft, when you understand this as a gray witch, it makes you be able to reach this very like pure essence and standards of almost like your morality. You understand the complexity of human life. You start to do very deep reflection to be able to go inward and understand who you are. You're able to navigate trickier challenges and oppositions and obstacles in your life a lot easier that you encounter. And it helps give you a lot more true power and control over your circumstances. Because as much as it may, like I said, as much as it's good intentioned, as much as it has, like I said, it's good intentions, as much as it has its well-being, the do no harm creed, it also it confines you, it restricts you, it puts you in this standard that somebody else has created for you to decide what your morals are. It's this very cookie cutter definition of what you should and should not be doing that doesn't allow you and challenge you to actually decide what your own morals are and to take charge of your own actions and your own beliefs and your own consequences in every single situation that you encounter. And so that's the other thing about it too, is it unconfines you and allows you to open that up and just really harness a lot more energy. Um, it allows you to thrive as a gray witch in that duality. It really, really allows you to be very, 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 very comfortable in that duality. Because like I've talked about before, like that sense of duality is very central to the philosophy of the gray witch. That belief that the world operates in shades of gray rather than this very simplistic view of black and white. It just simply isn't the viewpoint of a gray witch. It's simply not the viewpoint of gray witchcraft. There is no person, no thing, no event that is simply one thing or the other. Everything is a mix of both. Everything has positive and negative effects to it. It just depends on the level and severity of each and the balance and how it influences. So like I said before, with the duality, it's also incredibly important that you take it and you implement it in every single part of your life. It's how you view your interactions with other people. It's how you try to communicate with other people as a gray witch and within gray witchcraft. It's also how you handle your emotions, which we'll talk about in just a minute, because I'm going to jump into the chat and see if you guys have any questions. Okay, ooh, we got some stuff. It was an adventure game. I wonder why. Why is it an adventure? I'm enjoying being in my liminal space. Yes, I love liminal spaces are amazing. And I'm going to talk about it in a minute. There's different kinds of liminal spaces. that we all can experience and go through as well. So I'm going to talk about that too in a little bit. So, and that's also very similar to a hedge witch, by the way. So if you're getting like a hedge witchy feel, like there is a little bit of kind of like overlap between the two, but there is some distinction. Um, that sounds like a very biblical way of thinking. Never noticed that way before. Yep, honey. That's exactly why. It's really, that's a yes. It's why I personally myself walked away from Wicca quite quickly when I first started this path, is that a specific creed is just, it's very, very biblical for me, very restrictive. Vincent, I throw hands after a certain point, so that rule has never fit me. Yeah, me either. How would you phrase your intention? My intention with what, Joanna? Like your intention, like as a gray witch in general? Is that what you're asking?
I'm just gonna unmute myself for a second because
Go
I
for
can't
it.
type that fast. Sorry. Yeah, like with the gray witch, like if you're like, what would the intention be if you were to be setting an intention? Because if you're not for the yes and not for the no, and want to be in between, and if you still want to set an intention, you know what I'm talking about?
So typically when it comes to like setting intentions, I get what you're saying. And you're not like you want to be living in that gray and that duality and that both spaces. You make sure that your intention is going to create and maintain balance. So there are times where you can swing a little bit more affirmative towards what people would call the white, because you need a little bit more of that for your balance. Or let's say you feel like your divine masculine has been a little bit, not quite as noticeable. You feel like your divine feminine's kind of overpowering a little bit more things in your energy and your magic. And you can have your intentions be set more in that divine masculine to balance that out. Otherwise, if you want to look at it from a neutral standpoint, I typically set my intentions in creating like both sides of it, to where I usually end it with whatever will is meant to be. That way it's set in the collective. It's very much like up to the collective, it's up to the multiverse, and it can help maintain that balance. Does that help answer that question for you? Kind of looking at it from both ways of how you kind of look at gray magic. Yes, awesome.
Yes, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Oh, there we go, honey. I was waiting for your hand to pop up. I was like, I haven't seen it yet.
Oh, the night's young. Um, Plus you do well. So,
This is
uh,
also my path, so I'm sure I'm being like way more detailed than normal. So I apologize.
no need to apologize for detail. Detail is nice. Um, I actually don't have a question. I just really didn't want to type this out. It kind of sounds like Grey Witchery is like a true neutral, like
Yes,
as in alignment. Yeah.
yes, 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 yes. I try to get people to understand that it's hard sometimes. So I'm glad it's coming across that way. Yes.
And for anyone who isn't a nerd, the true neutral is a alignment in Dungeons and Dragons. So it's like one of the rarest ones because it's not lawful, not good, not bad, not chaotic, it's just right in the middle. So anyway.
Okay, any other questions, guys? Okay, let's jump back in. Okay, so I've kind of talked about it quite a bit, but we'll talk about it a little bit more because why not? So like we've talked about, gray witches, we're about balance, we're about duality, we're about understanding like the fact that the multiverse, the universe, the collective nature and energy, it is this very primal force that comes from both of those co-creators, both of those cosmic energies. And so we understand that because all entities come from that, that includes humans, that we ourselves are both those energies as well, which means that we are both what people call good and evil. Philosophy has literally questioned whether humans are inherently born good or evil probably since the beginning of like us actually like self-reflecting and like really looking in and trying to figure that out. And from the beginning of philosophy, to be honest, probably one of the first questions we really wanted to know. But we really want to know, like, if we're inherently born good or evil, as people call it, or if actions are actually what define our true nature. Well, we've actually, like, as gray witches, and if you choose to be a gray witch and follow the gray witchcraft path, um, we've decided, we don't choose a side. We're no, it's no, it's not a thing. Like we're not either or. It is possible to accept that we simply are just humans, which means that we are made of both of those energies, which means depending on the moment, depending on who we are, depending on each action we take, it can either be wondrous and good or it can be terrible and evil. It can attach to either one of those energies or it can be neither and be neutral. So we really don't like when it comes to gray witches and gray witchcraft, it's understanding like the true essence of human nature at its core. Like we are neither one of those. Like we were not a single one. Like neither one of us are those. Like it is simply like what we choose to do with the intentions of the energies of who we are as a human being. Because remember, humans, we simply are energy. That's all we are. That's all we exist, and we exist from those divine co-creators. Exist from that neutral, that dualistic energy. So with this, like we totally understand that like we can be this, and because we understand that, because we kind of let go of that, and when you choose that path, when we choose that greatness, when you choose that reality, it creates just this very like freeing sense, honestly. Like it creates this very freeing sense, like you're not quite as judgmental with like what you choose to do. You're not quite so restrictive and worried. You really understand like truly who you are as an essence of a human being, and the fact that like you meld into that collective, that universe as well. It also, like I said, it doesn't confine you and restrict you and control your potential when you sit there and wonder and flip flop like about, is this good or is this evil, and am I good or am I evil, and am I meant, like what is, like am I meant to be, like are all human, like when you let go of that and you simply understand we are all this collective and this energy and it's human nature, that we will all experience and be both of these, all of these, none of these at some point in time and at all time. Like it really just frees that up and lets that go, and it lets you walk that path in all essences of your life and experience your magic and your spirituality in a much more wide opening and freeing way. It also very much lets you connect to nature in a very primal way, because you understand, like it helps you connect to that essence with nature as well. Because nature, Earth, Mother Earth, it's not good or evil either. Like there is no good or evil. It simply is. It does what it needs to survive, to exist. It creates, it destroys, it ebbs and flows. And when you release this restriction that a human being, for some reason, we're so much different that like we have this good and evil tied to us, but the rest of nature doesn't. When you release that, like it's a very freeing, connecting experience with the natural elements around you. And then again, like I have that disclaimer, like I don't believe in the terms good and evil. It simply is not something that exists in my practice. It's not something that exists in my beliefs. I'm simply teaching this way because this is how most people look at the human nature. I do not use those terms. They don't exist for me. I don't believe that anything is no, good and evil are not a thing. It's not how I view the world. I view that the multiverse, its energies, and the results of its entities and actions are either wanted versus unwanted, and all depends on the entities involved. There's not single person, single entity, single event, single nothing that I will sit there and say is good or evil. I won't even have discussion about good versus evil because it's simply just not a belief that I don't agree with it. It's wanted versus unwanted. That's how I view it. Not every Grey Witch does, but I did want to put that disclaimer in there. I did write it the way is very commonly viewed, and I did teach it to you guys that way. So Grey Witches with emotions. I talked about it. I've talked about it quite a few times. When it comes to the duality, the balance, the being in the neutral, the understanding that balance in all areas of your life to connect that really wholly to your spirituality, your magic, and your practice. It's incorporating duality and balance also into your mentality. It's into your mentality, the way that you view your interactions with other people, the way that you communicate with other people, how you view emotions, how you view situations, how you process situations. Because of this, and because of Grey Witches do take this sense of their magic and witchcraft this deep into who they are, into their psyche and everyday part of their life, they become very, very powerful at mental power and mental control once they master this. And like I've touched on before, like this is very evident in the Hermetic law, as within, so without, as above, so below, as the universe, so the soul. Like it teaches us this. Like it teaches us this philosophical perspective that really, really outlines this idea that who we are on the inside will be created in the world around us. And therefore, in order to make sure that the world around us, the multiverse, our magic stays in balance, stays in the gray, we really thrive in that. We ourselves need to also be that on the inside. We ourselves emotionally, we ourselves like all of that, like we need to incorporate that law really, really explains and handles that to us. Also why I get so aggravated when I see all the time just as above so below. Like no, you're missing so much more of that law that's so important. There's so like it's such an encompassing law. um but they really, really, as Grey Witch with Grey Witchcraft, you really understand and incorporate this in their lives, and especially with how they handle their emotions. I can personally attest to the fact that, like, when I fully understand and did the correct therapy and the correct work and really looked at emotional intelligence, went through DBT and understand duality with emotions and mental health and emotional intelligence and understanding wise mind versus emotion mind and all of that, my magic and spirituality, my connection, it magnified more than I ever could have imagined. Like I was shocked at how much like that exploded when that full connection really hit and clicked. But when you really understand this and encompass this as a Grey Witch, it allows you to be happy. It allows you to leave enough room for those unwanted. Because again, I don't believe any emotion is bad. I don't believe any emotion is negative because every emotion serves a purpose. Every emotion is trying to communicate something to you. It's trying to tell you something that you need to know. So it's just it may be unwanted and you may not want to deal with it. It may be uncomfortable. But you literally leave room to make sure that those unwanted feelings actually get to run their course, like such as jealousy and anger and grief and sadness and despair and depression. Gray witches, like they really don't suppress them. They don't suppress them. They don't shove them down. They don't push them to the shadows. They don't really put stuff around them. They really just they feel them. They let them be expressed. They make sure that they keep them within a valid and justifiable level. They still look at and make sure like wise mind is being met and emotion mind's not completely taken over and that your logical mind isn't completely taken over as well. So it really, really is just understanding that those emotions as well, when they come forth, those unwanted emotions, they really actually create a very powerful energy within you and the collective around you. It's this very, very, very dynamic storm of energy to also allow you to heal without any mask being there, without your shadows being too restrictive and too confining, without having like too much there to suppress. And a gray witch really, really understands that. And they understand that, like I said, every emotion has a function and it allows you to understand that function to change it if you need to, or just allow it to move through if that's what needs to be felt. Okay, let me see where we're at. Okay, we'll talk about the liminal space here. And then we'll jump into the chat before we talk about very common other beliefs that come across Grey Witch and witchcraft. So the liminal space. So very similar to a head witch, Grey witches live and thrive in the liminal spaces. Since they are dripping in gray energy, they're dripping in gray magic, they're dripping in neutrality, they're dripping in just like this, are you going this way or this way, and I don't know which yet, and I'm in this in between of growth and transformation, so it's this very gray space. And so they really, really thrive and love to be here. What is a liminal space if you don't know? Liminal comes actually from the Latin word limen, which means threshold. So therefore, liminal spaces are places where a threshold is going to be crossed. Spaces of transition or in between spaces, if you want to call them that as well. It's a space where you leave where you are, but you're not yet fully in another space yet. It is that in between kind of in between zone. But in general, the liminal space is also that space where we're able to communicate with our spirits and otherworldly beings. We're able to perform energy work, such as Reiki. If you're doing Reiki, you're in a liminal space. Other healing methods, you're in a little liminal space. If you do any past life work or work with ancestors or the Akashic records, you're in a liminal space. Trauma work, you're in a liminal space. So there's lots and lots of different types of liminal spaces. The main three are physical, spiritual, and magical liminal spaces. So magical liminal spaces, their type of spiritual liminal spaces, they're going to be unique for each practitioner. But these are very magical liminal spaces that are personal times of power, when the veil between the worlds is the thinnest. So often this is going to be like sacred holidays, times of the day, certain moons, certain signs that are just very, you're connected to. Um, and just that you kind of connect to. You then also have personal liminal spaces, which is where personal characteristics, which embody us, are going to be. So this is when you're kind of like, mm, and I want to explain this. Hmm. It's when you're kind of transitioning, like, so for example, there's some characteristics to where like you're kind of gonna be in a liminal space no matter what. So best example, I'm bisexual. That's a pretty liminal space. I'm gonna be staying in a pretty liminal space, identifying as a bisexual my entire life. I like two genders. I go one way or the other. So that's a very liminal, personal characteristic about myself, that puts me in this liminal space that I'm going to be in. So there are other liminal spaces that are known like that as well. And then you have spiritual liminal spaces. So these can be identified as experimental liminal spaces, events or states in which you like leave something behind, but you haven't quite arrived at your next destination. So these are what are really known as like your awakenings, your enlightening processes, your spiritual transitions, your all of those transformations, those healing processes, those breaking through of layers, that's those spiritual liminal spaces. Um, some examples of liminal practices, because honestly, I think every witch works with liminal spaces in some way, shape, or form. So spirit work, anything that has to do with mediumship is going to be considered working with a liminal space and a liminal practice. Divination, any form of divination. Casting spells is technically working with a liminal space, especially if you're working with manifestation and intention. Like you are going into this liminal space to create, manipulate, and change things. You're not quite at the time of the outcome that you want, and you're not where you want now when you're casting that work. If you're working with deities or asking them to be present in your space, ancestor work, energy healing like meditation, shamanic journaling, Reiki, Akashic record work, anything like that. Those are all liminal practices. Okay, let's jump into the chat, see if you guys got any questions. Let's see. Vincent, I think you said that before and I saw that. Why do I think of gray? Why is there Oh, the Gray Jedi every time. I don't know. I mean, it makes sense. The Gray Rexes are reminding me of being in the void stage of awakening from David Hawkins, which is awesome. I don't know if I know what that is. I don't know if I've read that, Robin. If is that something I can watch or read? Being in the void stage of awakening from David Hawkins. I'll write it down. Okay, you guys got any questions or any comments? I'm just writing down what Robin put in the chat. Is that Robin who put that in the chat? No, Joanna put that in the chat. I'm so sorry, Robin and Joanna. I saw Robin above you, and then I'm reading what Joanna said. Joanna, I'm so sorry. I'm not quite sure what being in the void stage of awakening from David Hawkins is, but I'm gonna write it down so I can look into it. Yeah, I get that. I think I get that, Rebecca, too. I hear that. I think of of Gandalf the Grey Wizard from Lord of the Rings. I get that. When I talk to people, that's the most common connection I get. So don't worry. I've definitely heard it before. Let's see. Okay, any other questions? Okay, Joanna, I'm gonna look that up. Okay, I'm gonna jump back in then. Okay, so what are popular other views that gray witches often have? So they think it's critical to incorporate the paths of both light work and shadow work into your practices. So like I said, it's duality, it's balance, it's working with both. I may have talked about breaking free of very restrictive light work and love and light terminology and practices and beliefs. And I did say that I think that light workers, a lot of them that I work with, create a very big imbalance. That is true, but that doesn't mean you don't still do light work and work with it. I do a shit ton of light work. You guys have done a lot of light work with me. And so like just making sure you incorporate both. Also shadow work. I love shadow work. I don't think I've taught a class where I haven't talked about shadow work and how crucial it is to your spiritual practice and who you are. So it's they think like a gray witch, we think it's incredibly critical. It's just critical to make sure you're using both. Like we talked about, don't believe in the rede of harm none. Also, don't believe in the threefold lot. Ridiculous. It's egotistical. I don't. It creates an imbalance in the universe. Huge energetic imbalance in the universe. The threefold law creates a huge energetic imbalance in the universe. So gray witches don't agree with that, and most often not don't believe in karma either. Karma and I have a very complicated relationship. I'm still, I agree with sacred contracts, sacred purposes, and I teach all about sacred contracts, and I understand that all of that. But karma and I have a very complicated relationship. But many gray witches, they've completely let go of that completely. The phrase "a witch who cannot harm cannot heal" resonates with them. It means a lot to them and to us. I wholeheartedly believe this. You cannot heal if you don't understand actual suffering. And there's also the philosophy of even when it comes from a medicine standpoint, if you don't know like what the disease does, what happens to it, how can you heal from it? So this understanding that like and also understanding that if you're not willing to hex, if you're not willing to do things that will actually help you heal and bring justice about, like it's you're not ever gonna fully heal. Gray witches, again, they believe that people are both good or evil or simply neither. It's they believe that that is a very core philosophy and belief and view. They often feel and believe when it comes in with witchcraft that a lot of people and they themselves are forcing positivity or either numbing pain. So that's a very common view. So they try to stay in the duality and try to like understand that like hopefully that isn't going to be happening. I personally do end up feeling like that often, and then I have to pull myself back and realize Okay, let's balance out, figure out why I'm forcing positivity, figure out why I'm numbing pain. Let's get myself back into balance. Let's get myself back into duality. You very painfully aware of when you're doing that. You become very painfully aware. They also believe that there's not one path, but there's two. To protect themselves and their loved ones, they will literally weave in between these two paths, in between these two choices, go in and out, stay in the middle. They will do whatever is necessary and needed to protect themselves, to align themselves, to manifest within those two paths. They will never tell you there is one right way, one answer. Like it's simply just no. Devil's advocate very often when it comes to this. But they will do what they need to. They will find what creates balance. They will find what creates duality. They will find what's going to protect themselves. They will make sure that justice, that's also very, very, very important. Um, they also, it might be common that a gray witch will find that misusing energy can be very harmful. So they actually reserve their energy work for times when they personally feel called to use it, specifically for justice or healing or to protect their families and their loved ones. So it's actually very common that a lot of gray witches will end up being solitary practitioners also for this reason, because they view it as a misuse of energy and that misusing your energy is harmful. It creates imbalance in the multiverse and collective. It's irresponsible. And so they save it simply for themselves. I had to be willing to understand that part of my sacred purpose was teaching and being around others for me to feel that my energy was no longer a misuse. So I personally, because I do personally agree with this, like my energy is reserved for what I solely agree that it should be used for. And if I use it incorrectly, that's completely irresponsible. But again, like I was solitary for an incredibly long time because of that philosophy. But then I understood part of my sacred contract and purpose was teaching and expanding and helping and growing others. So I've come to understand that that's no longer misuse of my energy, and I'm okay with that. Um, they also, gray witches, they also might only use their magic to gain balance in the multiverse, the universe, or simply only for themselves or those that they hold dear. This is a big reason why I simply use a lot of my magic is I try to maintain balance. Myself personally as a gray witch, many of the gray witches that I have spoken to and talked to, this is also common. It's simply to gain balance, maintain balance in the multiverse within themselves, within those that they're working with, within those that come to work with them, with those that they hold dear, all of that. So being a witch in and of itself is a political act. But a gray witch takes it a little bit further, really hoping and understanding and really truly, truly believing that their magic, their beliefs, their energy can help restore justice for humanity. Like they really, truly, wholeheartedly believe that being in that balance, that duality, understanding that neutrality is the greatest hope to actually restore humanity, to have a balanced collective, to have all of that hope and everything that we're supposed to be having all together. I subscribe to that. They could also have the belief that they are a neutral force as well, rather than being a dual one. So you have to look at that as well. Are you always neutral, or are you trying to be dual and maintaining balance? That's a very that's a contentious debate. Um, and honestly, I've gone from one side to the other within my practice. I swing more from I'm dual, and I tried to maintain that balance between the dualities and have that balance between the two and understand sometimes it may tip, but I need to bring it back without judgment, and that's fine. I do try to make sure that I stay as neutral as I can and walk that middle path as much as I can, but I also understand human nature, which is why I swing more towards duality. And then one other very common thing when it comes to gray witches and witchcraft is it doesn't matter to a gray witch how you view them. They know that your opinion is completely subjective and it's going to change from person to person. We understand that some people are going to be like, wow, your path is so it's different, it's unique, it's inspiring, and other people are going to think that it's a scapegoat, it's disgusting, it's gross, you're just trying not to have morality. I've heard so many different things, to be honest. I've had so many different things thrown at me when it comes to talking about it, but like we just, a gray witch simply just doesn't care. We're very set. We understand our beliefs and who we are and our place in the multiverse. We understand our how we view the sense of duality. And we also, like I said, we understand that it's also subjective. Like you have a right to view the universe how you view it and interact with it how you want to, and that's totally fine. And my way may not resonate with you, and that's totally fine. So how do you incorporate gray witchcraft into your practices? So gray witches work with an incredibly broad spectrum of practices, of spirits, of celestial entities, of ancestors, both living and those to come. Gray witches work with a very, very, very broad spectrum of things, energies, entities. Um, they really follow their intuition. They move with the ebb and flow of balance, and they call the entities needed to either create or maintain the balance with each spell, each working, and each ritual they do, they perform, or they cast. What really matters to Grey Witches is how they feel when they're inspired in that moment, how the energy feels, how the collective feels, where they're at in processing the inner healing. Are they using their magic and their energy to enact justice? And most importantly, maintaining that balance and that duality. It's gonna differ from gray witch to gray witch. It's gonna differ from time to time, practice to practice. If you've been with me for a while now, like some of you have, I never ever cast anything the same. It is always different. There are common elements because I know what needs to be there for myself to maintain balance, but it's always slightly different. I follow the ebbs and flows of the energy. I pull from where needs to be pulled from to create that duality and that balance. And that is really what incorporating gray witchcraft into your magic is really all about. It's a very intuitive reading and understanding with that energy to maintain that balance around you. That's why there's really not a blueprint for putting it into your balance, because again, it's about perspective, it's about each moment, it's about each working you're doing, and really, really understanding that ebb and flow of the nature and the energy around you. But some ideas of ways that you can specifically incorporate gray witchcraft into your practices are going to be finding ways to include balance into your mindset and into your spiritual practice. So, finding ways to just simply include balance, make it a very clear representation in front of yourself. So, for example, if you work with deities and deities are part of your work and about your energy, and you've really only ever had a god around for a very long time, well, now try to include balance in your mindset and your spiritual practice by adding a goddess. If you have only ever had a goddess, try doing vice versa and adding a god. Doing things like that to include balance in your mindset and your spiritual practice. Also, in your mindset in your life, doing ways to include balance in that, making sure that when you're having communication with others that like they're not saying things that are very black and white, you're not saying things that are very black and white, you're looking at your interactions with other people from alternate perspectives, you're trying to look at the duality of how two things can exist at once. Literally, you guys, two things exist at once. And that's really what this is about. And that's really what maintaining this is about. That's really like the core of duality. It's two things, opposing things, can be true at the same time. So incorporate that into your mindset and your life when you're with others, with your emotions, all of that. Um, Other ways are utilizing magical intentions that involve nature because the natural world around us is neutral, it's balanced, it ebbs and flows as it needs to, it creates and destroys as it needs to. If you've been to a lot of my stuff, who's always there? Who do I I'm always working with the elements. I'm always working with the elementals. I don't think I've ever done one thing, even if one element is a primary core energy. I don't think I've ever cast a single circle. I don't think I've ever done a single work with you guys with only one element present. It's simply just is, just doesn't feel right to me. So with gray witchcraft, like encompassing all of nature, all of that world, you get that neutrality and that balance. A lot of my stuff is very steeped in nature, and with gray witchcraft and gray witch, that's very central. We talked about it before. Integrate shadow work into your practice. Allow yourself to work through those unwanted thoughts and feelings. I have negative written down because a lot of, again, that's how a lot of people view it. I view it unwanted, but work through them. Don't suppress them. And by work through them, we're just about to get to shadow work, so I'm going to talk about it now, anyways. And by work through them, I mean you're not encountering your shadow to transform it, to change it, to turn it into something else on your way to your light, which is how many people are teaching this, especially light workers, especially when you want to be, especially light witches, they'll look at shadow work in that aspect. When you're looking at it from this gray witch perspective, you are doing the shadow work to acknowledge, to embrace, to accept that shadow self, to allow it to express itself in a neutral, safe zone, to allow it to have a neutral, safe experience, to allow yourself to understand the duality of the trauma you experienced, to allow yourself to feel the duality of the emotions you experience, to fully understand what it was communicating for you. You're not going to your shadow to change it, to transform it, to try to just love it and move it aside. You're there to let it comfortably express itself. Because when it's expressing itself, like through rage and grief and fear, and it's letting all of that out, it's allowing true balance, it's allowing true duality, and it also allows you access to some incredibly potent magic and energy and self awareness. Which then, if your shadow chooses, it wants to reshape itself if it sees fit, you ebb and flow with it and you watch and move and grow with it. You aren't there to dictate, control, and work through your shadow on your way to a light and a different version of yourself. You're there to embrace it, implement it, become totally one with it. So you are a true, neutral, divine, dual being. That is also the difference between shadow work as a gray witch, a light witch, and many different ways that I'm seeing it. Um, I really wanted to touch on that, by the way. Like I really wanted to touch on that. I touch on it also in my shadow work class, by the way. If you haven't watched that, it's linked in the study guide. I also have an ebook that you can get from me. You can also book me for one-on-one sessions. Like shadow work's my jam. Like shadow work and deity work, like it's my jam. But I really wanted to touch on that. Like that is how in gray witchcraft as gray witch, that's how you work with that shadow. Other ways that you can bring gray witchcraft into your practices are study and incorporate spell works and magical intentions that create balance specifically. They work to combine what people call both positive and negative energy, masculine and feminine energy, dark and light. I hate having to say those terms, but it's use intentions, magical working, spell works, rituals that focus on both of those. We just went through Beltane. Oh, love that time. Love that time. Like for that reason, like Beltane just happened. Like we still have that energy around right now. But like connecting to stuff like that, great way to bring gray witchcraft, gray magic, start to really harness and work on this path. Other ways is connecting with ancestors, gods, goddesses, deities, ascended masters, entities that embrace balance and duality. So connecting to those, working with those, making them a part of your practice. I don't know very many gray witches that I've encountered so far that don't work with many different types of entities and celestials and goddesses and deities, and they call them in. Like I said, we also understand the duality and the balance that like we are also divine beings ourselves, but there are also gods and goddesses and other entities that we can work with. Both of us can exist at the same time. Both of us can be divine. It's just different energies. It's different elements for us to connect to. And then also another way that you can do this is adding all the five elements into your practice, like I talked about, not just connecting to the natural world around you, but then also working with the elements in your practice, all five of them, bringing them in often as much as you can. Trying not to pick and choose so you have that balance within all of the elements around you. Okay, so the last little bit that we have here, I didn't know how long this class is gonna go, to be honest. Is just remember the main intention with a Grey Witch is to be a catalyst in healing, in justice, to maintain balance, to maintain duality, and to really understand that the light that a lot of times you see talking about, it really is just a symbol of our higher divine mind. The dark is our deeper unconscious part of ourselves, that very primal animal part, that profound power of physicality, and we try to understand both of those entities, both of those energies, and create that balance between this two. It really, really unlocks this very potent freedom, this very potent, powerful magic. It creates so many more doorways, so many more avenues and paths for you to go through. Your spiritual potential in the path of witchcraft just skyrockets. And I honestly, I mean, I might be a little biased because it's my path that I've chosen, but I really believe that being a Grey Witch is honestly probably one of the most beautiful, evolved forms of a human being that you honestly can be. You exist without illusions, you exist without masks, you're incredibly authentic. I think if you've been with a lot of classes with me, that comes across clearly clear for me. I'm very much myself. I don't have apologies about it. I don't live with masks. I don't live with illusions. I'm very free. I'm very raw. You end up becoming very much your whole you. You have this ability to kind of command everything around you. Again, that doesn't mean I don't suffer. It doesn't mean I don't have other things going on. I'm a dualistic being just like everybody else. All of us are. Like, we're gonna swing, but like I really do wholly believe that when you choose this path, like, again, I might be a little bit biased, and I'm gonna teach all other paths because I believe learning from all of them are important as a mystic, but because I am very much a Grey Witch, again, I just think it changes, it helps you understand really how to embrace both your shadows, also to change your frequencies and try to rise above, like you understand the above, below, the in, the out, your soul, the universe. You really, really understand this ebb and flow, this cosmic dance. And you really just become this very, very masterful, powerful being that has this ability to take all of these energies from the multiverse, exist in this one being and this one entity in just very beautiful, enchanting, powerful way. And that is Grey Witchcraft and Grey Magic, guys. So what classes do you guys have? Sorry, Joanna. You just said karma. My life just blinked on and off. LMAO. I can't make this up. Synchronicity. Yeah, karma and I, like I said, we have an interesting relationship because I do wholeheartedly agree with and understand sacred contracts and sacred purposes. I taught a class on it and like the Akashic record and all of that. And that's why I work with Ascended Masters. But there's other parts of karma and like the karmic wheel, and I totally agree with reincarnation and things like that, but there's other parts of it that are just so restrictive that create imbalance in the multiverse, and it's I have we yeah, very complicated relationship. But most Grey Witches, they won't even, it's just karma is not a thing for them. It's too restrictive. It doesn't allow you your full potential. It creates you, it ties you to um you know, it ties you to one path, and it's just not, it's not something they agree with. And that's kind of why I disagree the two. Okay, go ahead, honey. What you got?
Two things. One, the I just want to make sure I know the terminology correctly. Shadow work is trying to figure out what the problem is, right? And light work is fixing it in a matter of
Mm,
speaking. Or what is light work? That's what I was trying to get
no,
at.
no.
Okay.
They both can do the same thing. It's in different ways. So light work typically is going to refer to healing type work that's going to focus on more like raising your vibrations, going into different frequencies, focusing on love, light energy. It's focusing simply on that. Whereas shadow work is where you're going deep into the depths of like who you are, the things that are unseen and unhidden. Light work is going to higher spiritual realms, your divine being. Yes, your divine being is also in your shadows, but it's going to things that are unhidden, pushed down, suppressed, you don't want to deal with, you don't portray to others. Whereas with light work, that's more what people are going to actually see all the time. That's more what you're going to portray. That's that, that love and light, positive, that light essence, that higher essence type of being. That's what that is. Does that help? Does that answer? You're welcome, Joanna. Thank you so much for being here tonight. I understand it's late and we're pretty much done, so you're good. But does that answer your question, honey?
Yeah, it does. That makes sense. Kind of like us like just like a quick wipe down versus deep clean.
Yeah, there we go. That's kind of how I look at it too.
Yeah.
Also, different ends of the spectrums too. So you also have to look at it that too.
Okay. Also, how much is there to karma? Because the only thing I know about karma is what you give out, you get back.
Um,
Not like threefold or that, just like if you're a lousy person, you're going to get bit a lot. That's
um,
basically all I know about karma.
so there's depending on who you talk to, there's actually anywhere between 7 and 12 karmic laws that follow within the energy. But yes, that's part of it, but there's also the part of the karmic wheel of, life and death and rebirth and their karmic debt. There's also the concept of karmic debt. So there's also the fact of that what you do in your lifetime will result in possible karmic debt, and then that determines your next reincarnation. Your sacred contract, your sacred purposes are all about you clearing that karmic debt with actions by you learning your lessons, fulfilling your sacred contracts, fulfilling your sacred purposes. And if you can fully clear that karmic debt, eventually through multiple reincarnations, you then have the ability to break free of the wheel of karma, which then means you no longer have to keep reincarnating back into this realm. You get to break free of this realm and go into the higher planes. There's like I said, there's depending on where you look, where you teach, anywhere between like 7 and 12. Sometimes I've seen 15, but more commonly 7 and 12 karmic laws. But those are like the three kind of like core ones. Like I said, the one that you talked about, then you have the idea of karmic debt throughout your lifetimes, which attaches you to the karmic wheel and all of that fun jazz. Does that answer some of it?
Dang, yes. Thank you.
I'm gonna go over this a lot more when we get to that region of the world in my practices and pantheon series. And we'll talk about like it's gonna pop up. So like trust me, like we'll get into it more. But that yeah, there's a lot more to karma than just the do unto others what you want to do unto you and what you put out is coming back to you. A lot more.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Michelle, let's see. I see a question here. What's the difference between Grey Witch and a Hedge Witch? For the most part, it's region. It's also cultural a little bit as well, but the difference between the two. Hedge witches typically majority of their stuff is gonna be like solitary. A lot of times it's also like generational. Not always, but a lot of times it's a generational kind of like passed down knowledge and practice. Also typically like hedge witches are on the outskirts of like towns and like city limits. I'm sorry, I just heard like a huge crash in the other room, so I wanted to wait to see if my son was gonna start crying. My husband's with him, but sometimes those toys, and what a 3-year-old, almost 3-year-old can do. The other difference is like they're typically on like the outskirts of populations, typically known as like wanting to be like very much out in wooded forest areas. That's where they thrive, where they live. Lots of herbalism, lots of magic that's really steeped in that. That's a lot of the main differences. Does that answer your question, Michelle? But like I said, similar in the fact that like liminal spaces, because the fact that hedge witches, like I said, they are a lot of times they're on the outskirts of towns, they're on the outskirts of populations, they're in wooded areas that are off by themselves. They're seen as outcasts, things like that. So they sit in that liminal, like they are almost always just in that liminal space. Um, so that's why I said it's very similar to that feel. And also because of that natural world aspect and the working with the element and being in the natural world as well. Does that answer your question, Michelle? And then
Okay, thank you. Yes, very much so.
you're welcome. Do you guys have any other questions or comments? Go ahead, honey.
It's not actually about a gray witch, but do you know what uh path you'll be doing next class?
I actually haven't decided yet. I was just deciding that. I'm like, do I wanna just go right into the difference between gray witchcraft and light and love only so we can talk about that? Do I want to talk about a very specific like path, like going into Luciferianism? I haven't decided yet.
Okay. I
So
was just
maybe
curious.
I'll kind of like maybe I'll put out into the chat of like let you guys just vote and see what you guys want me to do next.
That'd be cool.
Because that's totally fine. I've studied plenty. I could also do, walk over the difference between shamanism and, you know, there's so many paths, guys. So many paths. So many paths. Okay. So if we don't have any other questions or any other comments, I figured this wasn't going to be quite 2 hours, because there's no guided work or summoning or meditation or anything with this. I kind of figured we'd probably be at about an hour and a half. So if there's no questions, no more comments, no feedback for me. Thank you guys so much for being here with me tonight. I am so thrilled and honored, for one, that you chose me to be a guided teacher, and two, because you chose to learn about my personal path. You got to learn a little bit about me as a teacher, my magic, my practice. So I very much appreciate that. It's very special to me. If you guys have any questions, any comments, you can always reach out to me. And if you want to enroll and you haven't enrolled, please send us a message so that we can get you enrolled. I am going to go through and answer a bunch of those messages this weekend. And then you can always check out my personal stuff that I do as well on modgepodgemystic.com. I offer services, readings, guided services. I have lots of free content, ebooks, bunch of stuff there for you guys. So thank you so much for being with me, you guys. I really, really appreciate it. I think my next event is Sunday morning, at 5:50, 5:40, 5:45 is I think when it's set. I am going to be doing a live, access to the 5/5 portal. It's an incredibly, incredibly powerful manifestation portal. If you don't want to be there though that early in the morning, that's totally fine. I'm doing it on Facebook Live so that you can watch it at the 5 p.m. at 5:55 p.m. So you can use it either in the EM, AM, or PM. I was gonna do it in the PM, but that's also my son's birthday. So I also don't want to take up my evening with him on his birthday. That's also why that day is super special to me too, for manifestation. It also gave me my son. And then I'm only teaching that day too because I'm teaching Sunday. I don't remember what I'm teaching right now, to be perfectly honest. Oh, I think I'm doing the Pink Ray of Light with Lady Nada on Sunday, but I am teaching because this is nap time. So I'll hopefully see you guys on Sunday. We're gonna be doing the next in the Ascended Masters series. Lady Nada is so interesting. I love her. If you've been with me before, I have a deep fascination with Atlantis. She's tied to Atlantis. So she's an Ascended Master tied to Atlantis. So she's incredibly interesting. So I'm really excited to do this and teach you guys with her. So have a good night, guys. Thank you so much for choosing to spend your evening with me. I have to stop the recording first. There we go.